My teacher gave me an F because I wrote too well, but I had the last laugh. Mrs. Walsh slammed my essay down on my desk with a giant red F scrawled across the top. The entire class turned to stare as she announced loudly, "This is clearly AI generated, Daniel. No sophomore writes like this." My stomach dropped. I poured my heart into that 5-page essay about my dad's deployment to Afghanistan. Every single word came from our late-night video calls, his handwritten letters that I kept in a shoebox, and my own raw memories of missing him during holidays and birthdays. "Mrs. Walsh, this is about my father," I said quietly, trying not to let my voice crack. "He's been deployed overseas for 8 months. These are real stories," he told me. She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please, Daniel. Anyone can make up a convenient sob story to cover their tracks. This prose is far too mature, too polished, too sophisticated for someone your age. You obviously used ChatGPT or some other AI tool." The humiliation was crushing. 28 pairs of eyes were staring at me like I was some kind of cheater. My best friend, Jake, looked away in embarrassment. Emily, who I'd had a crush on since 7th grade, actually shook her head in disappointment. "I can prove this is real," I stammered, pulling out my phone. "I have all his letters, photos from Save the Performance for Drama class," Mrs. Walsh snapped. "You're getting a 0 for academic dishonesty, and I'm reporting this to the administration." That night, I sat in my room staring at the crumpled essay, fighting back tears. When my dad called for our weekly check-in from his base in Kandahar, I almost didn't want to tell him, but something in my voice must have given it away. "What's wrong, son? You sound upset." I explained everything. How I'd written about his stories of helping Afghan children, about the time he shared his MREs with a starving family, about how proud I was of his service, how Mrs. Walsh had humiliated me in front of everyone. The line went quiet for what felt like forever. When Dad finally spoke, his voice had that cold, commanding tone I rarely heard. "Daniel, I need you to send me her email address right now." "Dad, you don't have to." "Son, send me the email. That's an order." The next morning, I walked into English class, dreading another day of whispers and suspicious looks. But something was different. Mrs. Walsh kept glancing at her computer screen with this weird expression like she'd seen a ghost. Around 10 minutes into class, she suddenly went completely white and started reading something very carefully. Her hands were actually shaking. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "Daniel, can you stay after class, please?" When the bell rang and everyone filed out, she closed the door and turned to face me. Her entire demeanor had changed from smug confidence to nervous panic. I received an email this morning," she began hesitantly, "from your father." She turned her laptop screen toward me, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was an official U.S. Army letterhead at the top with my dad's full name and rank clearly displayed. Colonel Daniel Harrison, Senior, 82nd Airborne Division. The email was professional but devastating. In formal military language, my dad had explained that he'd been helping me develop my writing skills since I was 7 years old, sharing stories from his 3 combat deployments, teaching me about sacrifice, honor, and service to country. He mentioned his own credentials: West Point graduate, master's degree in literature from Georgetown, published articles in military journals. He politely but firmly suggested that perhaps Mrs. Walsh might want to reconsider her assessment of my capabilities. But here's the part that made my jaw drop. He had CC'd the email to Principal Anderson, Superintendent Williams, and every single member of the school board. "Fine, I'll review your essay again," Mrs. Walsh said coldly, opening her gradebook, "but I'm sure I'll find the same issues." As she scrolled through her digital records, her clicking got slower and slower. I watched her face go completely white as she stared at something on the screen. "This can't be right," she whispered. Her hand covered her mouth as she looked at me with pure panic in her eyes. She'd accidentally opened the wrong file, one she kept hidden from administrators, and I could see from where I stood that it contained 2 different gradebooks for her classes. The official one she submitted, and a second one where she'd been systematically giving lower grades to students with deployed parents while giving her favorites inflated scores. I just froze, like literally could not move. My brain was trying to process what I was seeing on her screen. There were 2 columns for every student, and some names had these massive differences between what she'd officially reported and what she'd actually given them. I saw Jake's brother's name from a few years back, the kid who lost valedictorian. His official grade showed a B-, but the hidden column showed an A. Next to his name was a little note that said, "Deployed mom, adjust accordingly." Mrs. Walsh's mouse was hovering over the close button, her hand shaking so badly the cursor kept missing. She finally slammed the laptop shut and whipped around to face me, her face this weird combination of red and white at the same time. "You need to leave," she said, her voice cracking. "Right now, Daniel. Get out of my classroom." "I saw what was on your screen," I said, my voice coming out way steadier than I felt inside. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "That was 2 different gradebooks. You didn't see anything," she snapped. But there was panic in her eyes now, not anger. "You're upset about your grade and you're making things up, just like you made up that essay." "I'm not making anything up," I said, backing toward the door. "And you know it. If you say one word about this to anyone," she started, then stopped herself. Her face went pale again as she realized she'd basically just admitted there was something to talk about. "Just go, now." I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my backpack and basically ran out of there, my hands shaking as I speed walked down the hallway. The bell for next period hadn't rung yet, so the halls were mostly empty. I kept replaying what I'd seen on that screen, trying to make sure I'd actually seen it and wasn't just imagining things because I was so pissed about my grade. But no, it was real. I'd seen Jake's brother's name. I'd seen those 2 different columns. I'd seen her panic when she realized I'd noticed. I went straight to the main office, not even stopping at my locker. The secretary looked up when I came in, probably wondering why I wasn't in class. "Is Principal Anderson available?" I asked. "It's kind of an emergency." She gave me this skeptical look, like students claiming emergencies was something she dealt with 10 times a day. "What kind of emergency, honey?" "I need to talk to him about something serious I just witnessed in Mrs. Walsh's classroom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It involves grade manipulation." That got her attention. Her eyebrows shot up and she picked up the phone, speaking quietly to someone on the other end. After a minute, she hung up and nodded toward the principal's office. "He can see you now." Principal Anderson was sitting behind his desk, eating a sandwich when I walked in. He was this older guy, maybe late 50s, who'd been principal at our school for like 15 years. He'd always seemed nice enough, but I'd never actually had to deal with him one-on-one before. "Daniel, right?" he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Have a seat. What's this about?" I sat down and took a deep breath. I just witnessed something serious on Mrs. Walsh's computer. She has 2 different grade books, one official and one hidden. The hidden one shows she's been manipulating grades for students whose parents are deployed military. His face didn't change at all. He just took another bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly while he looked at me. "That's quite an accusation," he finally said. "Mrs. Walsh has been teaching here for 6 years. She's one of our most respected English teachers." "I know what I saw," I said, feeling my confidence starting to waver under his steady gaze. "She accidentally opened the wrong file while I was standing there. I saw my friend's brother's name, the one who lost valedictorian status. His real grade was way higher than what was officially reported." Principal Anderson set down his sandwich and wiped his hands on a napkin. "Daniel, I understand you're upset about the grade you received on your essay. Your father sent quite an email this morning to myself and several other administrators." "This isn't about my grade," I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "This is about what I saw on her computer. She has proof right there of what she's been doing." He sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Tell me exactly what you saw. Every detail you can remember." So I did. I told him about the 2 columns, the notes next to names, Jake's brother's grades, everything I could remember from those few seconds before she'd slammed her laptop shut. The whole time I was talking, Principal Anderson just sat there listening, his expression giving away absolutely nothing about what he was thinking. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "All right," he said finally. "I'll look into this, but I want you to understand, Daniel, these are very serious allegations. If they turn out to be unfounded, there could be consequences for making false accusations against a teacher." "I know what I saw," I repeated. "And honestly, sir, my dad's email this morning, the one he sent to you and the school board, he's going to want to know about this too." Something flickered across Principal Anderson's face at that. "Write down everything you just told me," he said, sliding a yellow legal pad across his desk. "Be as detailed as possible. Include the time, what class period it was, exactly where you were standing, what you could see on the screen, everything." I spent the next 20 minutes writing it all down, trying to remember every detail. My hand was cramping by the time I finished, but I wanted to make sure I got it all correct while it was still fresh in my mind. When I handed the pad back to Principal Anderson, he read through it carefully, his expression still giving nothing away. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," he said, standing up. "I'm going to need you to keep this confidential while we investigate, understand? Don't discuss this with other students, not even Jake. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," I said, though I wasn't sure how I was going to not tell Jake his brother might have been screwed over by Mrs. Walsh. "Good. You can go to your next class now. I'll have the secretary write you a pass." That evening, I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on homework when my phone rang. Dad's number lit up the screen. I grabbed it immediately. "Hey, Dad." "Daniel." His voice had that serious tone again, the one that meant he was in full colonel mode. "I need you to tell me everything that happened today. Start from when you walked into Mrs. Walsh's classroom this morning, and don't leave anything out." So I told him everything. About Mrs. Walsh receiving his email, about her reviewing my essay, about accidentally seeing the hidden gradebook on her computer screen, about going to Principal Anderson. Dad didn't interrupt once, just listened in that intense way he had where you could tell he was processing and analyzing every single word. When I finished, the line was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "I want you to write down exactly what you saw on that computer screen while the memory is still fresh. Every 19 detail, names, grades, any notes you could see. Time it, date it, and send me photos of the handwritten account. Don't type it up, I want your handwriting. You understand why?" "So there's proof I wrote it today," I said, understanding, "before anything else happens." "Exactly. This is important, son. What you witnessed could be evidence of systematic discrimination against military families. That's not just a school issue, that's potentially a legal issue. I need you to document everything properly." I felt my stomach twist. "Dad, I just wanted to tell someone what I saw. I didn't mean to start some huge thing." "You didn't start anything. Dad said firmly. Mrs. Walsh did. Years ago by the sound of it. You just had the courage to speak up. I'm proud of you, Daniel. Now, go write down everything you remember. Take your time. Be thorough. Send me photos when you're done. After we hung up, I got out a notebook and started writing. I described the layout of her screen, the 2 columns I'd seen, the names I could remember, the note about deployed mom, adjust accordingly. My hand was cramping again by the time I finished, but I made sure to include every single detail I could recall. Then I took photos from multiple angles, making sure the date and time were visible on my phone, and sent them to Dad. His response came back within minutes. Good work, son. Now try to get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. That was the understatement of the year. The next morning, I walked into school and immediately felt like something was off. Mrs. Walsh wasn't standing outside her classroom door like she usually did, greeting students as they arrived. Instead, there was a substitute teacher I'd never seen before. This younger woman who looked kind of nervous, setting up at Mrs. Walsh's desk. Jake caught up with me at my locker. "Dude, did you hear?" he said, his eyes wide. "Walsh isn't here today. Nobody knows why, but there's a sub in her class." I tried to keep my face neutral. Weird. Maybe she's sick or something. Maybe, Jake said, but he didn't sound convinced. But people are saying it's weird that she's gone the day after she accused you of cheating, and then your dad sent that email to like everyone. You think there's a connection? Before I could answer, the intercom crackled to life. "Daniel Harrison, please report to Principal Anderson's office immediately." Daniel Harrison to the principal's office. Every student in the hallway turned to look at me. Jake's eyes went even wider. "Dude, what did you do?" "Nothing," I said, closing my locker. Which was technically true, I had just reported what I'd seen. "I'll catch up with you later." The walk to the principal's office felt like it took forever. When I got there, the secretary just waved me through without saying anything. Principal Anderson's office door was open, and inside I could see him sitting with another man in a suit I didn't recognize. They both looked up when I knocked. "Daniel, come in," Principal Anderson said. "This is Superintendent Williams. He has some questions for you about what you reported yesterday." Superintendent Williams was this tall guy with gray hair, probably in his 60s, wearing an expensive-looking suit. He stood up and shook my hand with a firm grip. "Thank you for coming in, Daniel. Please, have a seat." I sat down, feeling my heart start racing again. This was way more official than I'd expected. "Am I in trouble?" I asked. "Not at all," Superintendent Williams said, his voice surprisingly kind. "We just need to understand exactly what happened yesterday. I've read your written statement, but I'd like to hear it from you directly. Can you walk me through what you saw on Mrs. Walsh's computer?" So I told the story again, trying to keep all the details straight. Both men listened intently, occasionally asking questions about specific things I'd seen or where exactly I'd been standing in the room. The superintendent took notes on a yellow legal pad similar to the one I'd used yesterday. "And you're certain you saw 2 distinct columns for grades?" he asked. "Not just one gradebook with notes or corrections?" "I'm certain," I said. "There were 2 separate columns, and some students had really different grades between them. Jake's brother's name, Jake Milton's brother Dylan, he had an A in one column, but the official grade showed a B-. And there was a note next to his name about deployed parents. The superintendent and principal exchanged a look. "Dylan Milton," Superintendent Williams said, writing something down. "We'll need to verify that. Daniel, what I'm about to tell you needs to stay confidential for now. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. We're bringing in our IT department to examine Mrs. Walsh's computer and all her teaching accounts. Based on what you've reported, we need to conduct a thorough investigation. This could take several days. In the meantime, you'll have a substitute teacher for English class." "Is Mrs. Walsh in trouble?" I asked. Principal Anderson shifted in his seat. "She's been placed on administrative leave while we investigate. That's all we can say right now." I left the office feeling kind of numb. I knew I'd done the right thing by reporting what I'd seen, but seeing how serious everything had become was honestly pretty overwhelming. I just wanted someone to know that Mrs. Walsh was treating military kids unfairly. I hadn't really thought about what would happen after that. Jake was waiting for me outside the main office, trying to look like he just happened to be walking by. "So," he said as soon as I came out, "what was that about?" I wanted to tell him everything, I really did, but I'd promised to keep it confidential. "Just some stuff about my essay," I said, which wasn't technically a lie. "It's fine, everything's good." He looked skeptical but didn't push it. "Okay, man. Hey, you want to come over after school? We could play some games or something." "Yeah, sounds good," I said, grateful for the distraction. Lunch that day was weird. Everyone was talking about Mrs. Walsh being gone and speculating about why. Some people thought she was sick, others were saying she'd quit, and a few were whispering that it had something to do with me and the cheating accusation. I just kept my head down and tried to focus on my food, but I could feel people staring at me. Emily actually came over to my table, which literally never happened. "Hey, Daniel," she said, sitting down across from me without being invited. "Can I ask you something?" Sure," I said, trying not to look as surprised as I felt. "Mrs. Walsh," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Did something happen with her? Like something serious?" I hesitated. "Why do you ask?" She bit her lip, looking uncomfortable. "My mom's in the Navy. She's been deployed since February, and I've always done really well in English, like it's one of my best subjects, you know? But in Walsh's class, I've been barely pulling C's. It doesn't make sense." And when I asked her about it, she just said my work wasn't up to standard, but she wouldn't really explain what I was doing wrong. My stomach dropped. "What's your mom's rank?" I asked. She's a lieutenant commander, Emily said. Why? No reason, I said quickly. I'm sure it's just, Walsh is tough on everyone, right? Emily didn't look convinced. Yeah, maybe. But it's weird timing, you know? You turn in this amazing essay about your deployed dad. She accuses you of cheating. Your dad sends some email and then suddenly she's gone the next day. She leaned forward. Daniel, did you report her for something? I couldn't lie to her. I can't really talk about it, I said. But if you've been having problems with your grades in her class, you should maybe mention that to Principal Anderson. Her eyes widened. Oh my God, she really did something, didn't she? I didn't say that, I said quickly. I just think if you've got concerns about your grades, you should talk to someone about it. Emily sat back, processing this. Okay, she said slowly. Okay, I think I will. Thanks, Daniel. After she left, Jake slid into the seat she'd vacated. What was that about? He asked. She was just asking about Walsh, I said. Everyone's curious. Yeah, well, I heard something interesting, Jake said, lowering his voice. My brother called me during lunch. Apparently, Principal Anderson's office contacted him this morning asking questions about his grades from when he was here, specifically his English grades with Walsh. I tried to keep my face neutral. Really? Yeah, he told me he always thought something was off about his grades in her class. He'd get A's on everything, participate in discussions, but somehow his final grade would end up being way lower than it should have been. It happened his senior year, right when our mom was deployed. He lost valedictorian because of those grades, Daniel. It screwed up his college applications. That's awful, man, I said, and I meant it. Jake looked at me carefully. You know something about this, don't you? That's what the principal wanted to talk to you about this morning. I sighed. I can't really discuss it, I said. But yeah, there might be some stuff coming out about Walsh's grading practices. That's all I can say. Jake leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. Holy shit, you got her, didn't you? Whatever she did, you caught her. I didn't do anything except report what I saw, I said. And seriously, Jake, you can't tell anyone about this conversation. If it gets out that I was talking about an ongoing investigation, I could get in trouble. My lips are sealed, Jake said. But dude, if this means my brother might get his grades corrected after all this time, that would be huge. Like, that could change his whole college situation. The rest of the day passed in a blur. By the time I got home, I was exhausted from trying to act normal while everyone was asking questions. Dad called again that evening, wanting another update. I told him about Emily and Jake's brother, about all the speculation going around school. Good, he said when I finished. It sounds like the investigation is moving forward properly. The truth is going to come out, Daniel. You did the right thing by speaking up. I know, I said, but it's weird, you know? Everyone's talking about it, but I can't say anything. And some people probably think I'm just causing trouble because I was mad about my grade. Let them think what they want, Dad said. The evidence will speak for itself. Just keep your head down and focus on your schoolwork. This will all be over soon. But he was wrong about that last part. It wasn't over soon. In fact, it was just getting started. 2 days later, I was called back to Principal Anderson's office. This time, there were 3 people waiting for me: the principal, the superintendent, and a woman I didn't recognize who introduced herself as someone from the school district's IT department. Daniel, we need to talk to you about what we found, Superintendent Williams said once I was seated. But first, I want you to understand that what we're about to discuss is still part of an ongoing investigation. You cannot share this information with anyone, including your friends or family. Your father is being briefed separately. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I said, feeling my mouth go dry. The IT woman opened a laptop and turned it to face me. We examined Mrs. Walsh's computer and her cloud storage accounts. What you reported seeing was absolutely accurate. She maintained 2 separate gradebooks. One was the official gradebook that synced with our school's grading system. The other was what she called her working grades. She clicked through some files on the screen. But it's worse than just having 2 gradebooks. We found notes attached to student names. Comments like military family, adjust down, or deployed parent, reduced by 1 letter grade. In some cases, she'd make notes about which students were her favorites and systematically inflate their grades. My stomach churned as I looked at the screen. There were dozens of names, students I recognized from different years. Next to each one were notes about their families and specific instructions about how their grades should be adjusted. How long has she been doing this? I asked. Based on the archived files we recovered, at least 6 years, Principal Anderson said quietly. Since she started teaching at this school. 6 years. I couldn't even process that. How many students? I asked. We're still determining the full scope, Superintendent Williams said. But so far, we've identified at least 37 students who appear to have been negatively impacted. And that's just from a preliminary review. The actual number could be much higher. What happens now? I asked. Now we contact every family we can identify who may have been affected, the superintendent said. We'll be reviewing all of those students' work and reassessing their grades. We're also contacting former students like Dylan Milton to inform them of the situation and offer to provide corrected transcripts. Mrs. Walsh has been placed on permanent administrative leave pending termination proceedings, Principal Anderson added. She will not be returning to this school. I sat there trying to take it all in. 37 students, maybe more. 6 years of deliberately sabotaging military kids' grades while helping her favorite students. It was so much bigger than I'd ever imagined. Daniel, I want you to know that we're taking this very seriously, Superintendent Williams said. What you witnessed and reported has exposed a severe breach of trust and professional ethics. A lot of students and families have been harmed by Mrs. Walsh's actions. But because of your courage in coming forward, we can now make this right. Will everyone find out it was me who reported it? I asked, voicing the worry that had been nagging at me. We're going to be as discreet as possible, Principal Anderson said, but given the timing and circumstances, some people may figure it out. If anyone gives you trouble about it, you come directly to me. Understood? Yes, sir. As I left the office, I felt this weird mix of relief and anxiety. Relief that I'd done the right thing and that the truth was coming out, but anxiety about what this meant for me, for Mrs. Walsh, for all the students who'd been affected. This was way bigger than just getting my essay grade fixed. That night, when Dad called, he already knew everything. Superintendent Williams briefed me this afternoon, he said. 37 confirmed cases so far, son. 37 military families whose kids were targeted. It's insane, Dad, I said. How did no one notice before? Because she was smart about it, Dad said, grimly. She never failed anyone outright, just lowered their grades enough to hurt their GPAs and class rankings, and she made sure to have plausible documentation. She'd write comments about how the work needed improvement or didn't meet standards. On paper, everything looked legitimate, so she got away with it for 6 years, I said. Until you caught her, Dad said. I know this feels overwhelming right now, Daniel, but what you did matters. You stopped her from hurting any more students. You gave those 37 families a chance to get justice. That takes real courage. Over the next few days, word spread fast through school. Principal Anderson sent emails to all current and former students who'd been in Mrs. Walsh's classes, asking parents to review their children's grades for any discrepancies. The local news picked up the story, though they didn't use names or specific details. By Friday, everyone at school was talking about the grade manipulation scandal. Jake found me at lunch that Friday, practically bouncing with excitement. Dude, my brother just called me. The school's officially correcting his grades. His GPA is going from a 3.7 to a 3.9. He's already contacted his college about getting his scholarship application reviewed with the updated information. That's amazing, I said, genuinely happy for them. It's because of you, Jake said. I know you're not supposed to talk about it, but everyone knows you're the one who reported Walsh. My brother wanted me to tell you thank you. Before I could respond, Emily appeared at our table. Can I sit? She asked. Sure, I said, scooting over to make room. I talked to Principal Anderson like you suggested, she said. They reviewed all my work in Walsh's class. Turns out my grades should have been B's and B pluses, not C's. They're correcting everything. Her eyes were shiny with tears. Daniel, I thought I was just bad at English. I thought there was something wrong with me, but it wasn't me at all. I'm glad they figured it out, I said, not sure what else to say. My mom called from her ship when she heard, Emily continued. She was so angry. Not at me, at Walsh. She said no one has the right to punish kids because of their parents' service. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you for speaking up. Seriously. As the day went on, more students approached me. Some thanked me, some asked questions I couldn't answer, some just wanted to share their own experiences with Mrs. Walsh. It was overwhelming, but also kind of validating. What I'd witnessed wasn't just about my essay or my grade, it was about something much bigger. The following week, I had my first class with our permanent replacement teacher, Mr. Foster. He was this stocky guy in his late 30s with a crew cut and ramrod straight posture. He introduced himself to the class on Monday morning with a simple statement. I'm Mr. Foster. I served in the Marines for 12 years before I became a teacher. I believe in hard work, honest feedback, and treating every student with respect. Over the next few weeks, I'll be reviewing all grades from this semester and giving everyone an opportunity to resubmit work if they feel their previous grades didn't reflect their actual abilities. A hand shot up in the back. Even the people who got good grades? Someone asked. Everyone, Mr. Foster said firmly. Because if the grading system wasn't fair, then no one's grades are reliable. We're starting fresh, and we're doing this right. After class, Mr. Foster called me over to his desk. Daniel Harrison, he said, looking at a file on his desk. I've read your essay about your father's deployment. It's exceptional work. Thank you, sir, I said. He pulled out my essay, the same one with Mrs. Walsh's red F still scrawled across the top, but now there was a new grade next to it, an A+ in blue ink. This is the grade your work deserved, he said. I'm also asking for your permission to use this essay as an example in my other classes. It's rare to see this level of emotional honesty and technical skill in high school writing. Really? I asked, surprised. Really, he said. Your father should be proud. I'd like to speak with him if he's available to get his perspective on having his service represented in your work. Would that be all right? I'll ask him, I said. He's deployed right now, but we do video calls. Perfect. I'll send my contact information home with you. Mr. Foster stood up and extended his hand. Thank you for your courage, Daniel. What you did wasn't easy, but it was right. That's what honor looks like. I shook his hand, feeling this weird lump in my throat. Thank you, sir. As I walked out of his classroom, I realized that for the first time in weeks, I felt okay. Not great, not amazing, but okay. Like maybe things were actually going to work out. But the story was far from over. In fact, the biggest revelations were still to come. 2 weeks after Mrs. Walsh was placed on leave, Principal Anderson called an assembly for all students who'd been in her classes over the past 6 years. Parents were invited too, and the auditorium was packed. Superintendent Williams stood at the podium looking serious. Thank you all for coming, he began. I know many of you have questions about the ongoing investigation into grade manipulation in Mrs. Walsh's English classes. Today, I want to provide you with an update and outline the steps we're taking to address the situation. He explained that the IT department had finished their analysis. The final count was worse than anyone had anticipated. 73 students had been negatively affected by Mrs. Walsh's grading practices. 17 of those students were current students. 56 were former students who had graduated in the past 5 years. Of the 73 affected students, 49 had parents who were deployed military at the time their grades were lowered, Superintendent Williams continued. The remaining 24 were students Mrs. Walsh apparently had personal issues with, though we haven't been able to determine a clear pattern for that second group. The auditorium erupted in angry murmurs. Parents were shaking their heads, some wiping away tears. I saw Emily sitting with her mom, who was in her Navy uniform. They were holding hands. We are in the process of contacting every affected family individually, the superintendent said, raising his voice to be heard over the noise. We will be issuing corrected transcripts and working with colleges and universities to ensure that no student suffers long-term academic consequences from this situation. We are also implementing new oversight procedures to ensure this never happens again. After the assembly, I was heading to my car when Jake's brother, Dylan, intercepted me in the parking lot. He was in his early 20s now, tall and muscular, wearing a jacket with his college logo. Daniel? He asked. Yeah, I'm Dylan Milton, Jake's brother. He stuck out his hand and I shook it. I wanted to thank you in person. Because of your report, the school corrected my transcripts. I sent them to my college's financial aid office with an explanation of what happened. They just approved me for a partial academic scholarship starting next semester. Seriously? I asked. Seriously. The scholarship doesn't cover everything, but it's enough to make a real difference. I'd basically given up on getting any academic money after losing valedictorian senior year. I thought I just wasn't good enough. His voice cracked slightly, but it wasn't about being good enough. It was about Walsh deliberately tanking my grades because my mom was deployed. I'm really glad they fixed it, I said. Jake told me you're the one who saw her hidden gradebook and reported it, Dylan said. That took guts, man, especially after she just humiliated you in front of your whole class. A lot of people would have just let it go, focused on getting their own grade fixed and moved on. But you made sure everyone affected got justice. That matters. Over the next few weeks, more stories emerged. A girl named Sophie who'd been planning to go to art school but settled for community college because her GPA tanked in Mrs. Walsh's class during her dad's deployment. A boy named Tyler who lost his spot in the National Honor Society because of a suspicious grade drop. A girl named Alexis whose recommendation letter from Mrs. Walsh had been so lukewarm that she got rejected from her dream school even though she'd been one of the best students in the class. Each story made me angrier. Mrs. Walsh hadn't just lowered grades. She'd altered the entire trajectory of these students' lives, all because their parents were serving our country. Principal Anderson called me in again, about 3 weeks after the initial discovery. Daniel, I want to update you on where things stand, he said. We've completed our review of all affected students. The school board has voted unanimously to terminate Mrs. Walsh's employment. She will not be eligible for rehire in any school district in the state. Is she facing any legal consequences? I asked. He hesitated. That's complicated. What she did was certainly unethical and violated her professional responsibilities. Whether it rises to the level of criminal conduct is something the district attorney is reviewing. Several families have expressed interest in pursuing civil lawsuits as well. What about students like Dylan who lost scholarships or got rejected from colleges? I asked. How do you fix that? We're working with each family individually, Principal Anderson said. In some cases, updated transcripts and explanation letters will be enough to get decisions reconsidered. In other cases, the damage may be harder to undo. That's why this situation is so serious. Mrs. Walsh didn't just lower some grades, she impacted people's futures. He pulled out a folder and slid it across his desk. This is for you. It's an official letter of commendation from the school board, recognizing your integrity and courage in reporting this situation. It will go in your permanent file and can be included in college applications if you choose. I opened the folder and read the letter. It was written on official school board letterhead and signed by all 7 board members. The words exemplary character and moral courage stood out. Thank you, I said. You earned it, Principal Anderson said. Not many students would have done what you did. Most would have been too worried about getting in trouble or being labeled a snitch. But you put doing the right thing above your own comfort. That's rare, Daniel. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about that. As November turned into December, the situation with Mrs. Walsh continued to unfold. The local newspaper ran a feature article about grade manipulation in schools, using our situation as a case study without naming specific individuals. The school board established a new policy requiring all grades to be reviewed quarterly by department heads to check for unusual patterns. They also created an anonymous reporting system where students could flag concerns about potential bias or unfair treatment. Mr. Foster turned out to be an incredible teacher. He was tough but fair, care, giving detailed feedback on every assignment, and always being available for extra help. The work was actually harder than it had been with Mrs. Walsh, but students were doing better because they actually understood what was expected and knew their grades reflected their real performance. One day in class, Mr. Foster announced that we'd be starting a new unit on personal narrative writing. "I want you to write about a time you stood up for something you believed in," he said. "It can be big or small, dramatic or quiet, but it should be true and it should matter to you." I knew immediately what I was going to write about, but I also knew I needed to be careful. The investigation was still ongoing, and I couldn't include details that might compromise anything. So I wrote about the experience in general terms, focusing on what it felt like to witness something wrong and have to decide whether to stay silent or speak up. When I turned in my essay 2 weeks later, I felt good about it. I'd been honest about the fear I'd felt, the uncertainty, the pressure to just mind my own business. But I'd also written about why I ultimately chose to report what I'd seen, how my dad had taught me that integrity means doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Mr. Foster returned my essay a week later with an A and a note at the bottom. This is the kind of writing that changes people's minds and opens their eyes. Never stop using your voice. Meanwhile, the fallout from the scandal continued. Mrs. Walsh hired a lawyer and tried to fight her termination, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The IT department had recovered emails where she'd discussed her grading practices with a friend, joking about how military kids were too distracted to do well, and how she was doing them a favor by keeping their expectations realistic. Those emails killed any chance she had of defending herself. The school board's attorney submitted them as evidence in the termination proceedings, and Mrs. Walsh withdrew her appeal. Her teaching license was suspended by the State Board of Education, pending a formal review. But the most significant development came in mid-December when the district attorney's office announced they were filing charges. Not criminal charges, they determined that while Mrs. Walsh's conduct was reprehensible, it didn't meet the legal definition of fraud or discrimination. But the DA's office helped several families file formal complaints with the state's Civil Rights Commission, arguing that deliberately targeting military families' children constituted illegal discrimination. My dad came home for Christmas leave right in the middle of all this. It was the first time I'd seen him in person in 8 months, and honestly, I kind of broke down when he walked through the door. All the stress and pressure of the past few months just hit me at once. He held me while I cried, not saying anything, just being there. When I finally pulled myself together, he said, "I'm proud of you, son. What you did took real courage. I know it hasn't been easy." "Everyone keeps saying that," I said, wiping my eyes. "But sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. Mrs. Walsh lost her job. Her whole career is ruined. What if I overreacted? What if I misunderstood what I saw?" Dad shook his head firmly. "You didn't misunderstand anything. The IT department found 6 years of documented evidence proving exactly what you reported. Mrs. Walsh made deliberate choices to harm students because of their parents' military service. She chose to target the children of people who were serving their country, people who were away from their families and putting their lives on the line. That's not just wrong, Daniel, that's evil. But her career, she destroyed her own career," Dad interrupted. "You didn't do that. You just exposed what she was already doing. If she'd wanted to keep her job, she should have treated her students fairly and honestly. She didn't. That's on her, not you." We spent Christmas with Jake's family, which was nice. Dylan was home from college and made a point of thanking me again. Jake's mom, who'd just returned from a deployment in Europe, gave me a huge hug and told me that what I'd done mattered to military families everywhere. "You stood up for our kids when no one else did," she said, tears in her eyes. "That means more than you know." After Christmas, things finally started to calm down. School resumed in January, and while people still talked about the Walsh situation occasionally, it wasn't the constant topic of conversation anymore. New dramas and gossip took over, which honestly was a relief. Mr. Foster continued to be an excellent teacher. In late January, he announced that the school district was hosting a writing competition for high school students with the theme Voices of Integrity. First place would receive a $2,000 scholarship to be used for college expenses. "I'd like to nominate several of you to enter," Mr. Foster said, looking around the classroom. His eyes landed on me. "Daniel, I think your personal narrative essay would be perfect for this competition. Would you be interested in entering?" "Sure," I said, feeling a flutter of nervousness and excitement. "I'd need to revise it though, add more detail now that the investigation's basically over." "That's fine. The deadline isn't until March. Take your time and make it the best it can be." I spent the next 6 weeks revising and expanding my essay. I added details about what I'd seen on Mrs. Walsh's computer, about my conversation with Principal Anderson, about watching other students discover that their grades had been manipulated. I wrote about the assembly where Superintendent Williams announced the full scope of the scandal. I wrote about Dylan getting his scholarship and Emily discovering she was actually good at English after all. But I also wrote about the hard parts, the guilt I felt about Mrs. Walsh losing her job, even though I knew she'd brought it on herself, the pressure of having everyone at school know I was the whistleblower, the fear that I'd somehow made the wrong choice by speaking up. In the end, I wrote about why integrity matters, how it's not just about following rules rules or doing what's easy, but about standing up for what's right even when it costs you something. How my dad's service had taught me that some things are worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for. I turned in my revised essay to Mr. Foster in early March, and he read it during lunch while I waited nervously. When he finished, he looked up at me with something like awe on his face. "Daniel, this is extraordinary," he said. "I've been teaching for 15 years, and I've never read anything by a high school student that's this mature, this self-aware, this honest. You're going to win this competition. I'm certain of it." "You really think so?" I asked. "I know so. This essay is the kind of thing that reminds people why integrity matters, why speaking truth to power matters. It's going to resonate with the judges." He was right. In late April, I got the call that I'd placed first in the writing competition. The award ceremony was held at a local university, and my dad arranged to be there via video call from his base. When they announced my name and I walked up to accept the scholarship check, I saw him on the big screen grinning with pride. The competition organizers, a local veterans organization, also invited me to read my essay aloud to the audience. Standing at that podium, looking out at a room full of teachers, students, parents, and veterans, I felt this overwhelming sense of validation. What I'd done mattered, my story mattered, but the real validation came from the stories people shared with me afterward. A teacher who'd been afraid to report a colleague's misconduct, but now felt inspired to speak up. A student who'd been bullied and stayed silent, but was now considering telling a counselor. A parent whose child had experienced unfair treatment at school, and was now planning to file a formal complaint. Over and over, people told me that my essay and my actions had given them courage to address their own situations. That's when I realized the impact of speaking up goes beyond just fixing one problem. It creates ripples that spread outward, encouraging others to find their own voices and stand up for what's right. Meanwhile, the legal and administrative consequences for Mrs. Walsh continued to unfold. In May, the State Civil Rights Commission ruled that her conduct did constitute discrimination against military families. She was fined $15,000 and permanently barred from working in any capacity with children or students in the state. Several families also filed civil lawsuits seeking damages for the harm caused by the grade manipulation. While those cases were still pending, Mrs. Walsh's insurance company reportedly was pushing her to settle to avoid further legal costs. The school district implemented comprehensive reforms to prevent similar situations in the future. All teachers now had to participate in annual bias training. Gradebooks were subject to quarterly audits by department chairs, and any student or parent could request a formal review of grades at any time, with an independent committee conducting the evaluation. Principal Anderson also established a new student council position, specifically focused on academic integrity and student advocacy. Emily ran for the position and won, becoming the first ever student advocate for fair grading. Her first act was to create a peer mentoring program where students with deployed parents could get extra support with their coursework. In June, as the school year was winding down, Mr. Foster made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I've received permission from Daniel and his father to use Daniel's award-winning essay as required reading for all my English classes next year," he said. "This essay represents the kind of powerful, honest writing I want all my students to aspire to. It's proof that high school students can tackle complex ethical questions and articulate their experiences with real sophistication." He looked directly at me. "Daniel, your essay is going to inspire and educate students for years to come. That's a legacy worth being proud of." On the last day of school, Jake's brother Dylan showed up during lunch with an announcement. "I wanted you all to know that I'll be graduating from college next month with a 3.8 GPA, he said. "And I've been accepted to grad school with a full scholarship. None of that would have been possible without the grade corrections that resulted from Daniel's report. So I just wanted to say thank you, publicly, for changing my life." The cafeteria erupted in applause. Emily stood up and started chanting my name, and pretty soon half the room had joined in. It was embarrassing, but also kind of amazing. For months, I'd worried that people would see me as the kid who'd gotten a teacher fired, but instead, they saw me as someone who'd stood up for what was right and made a real difference. That summer, I got a letter from Mrs. Walsh's attorney. For a moment, I panicked, thinking she was suing me or something. But when I opened it, I found a brief statement from Mrs. Walsh herself. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was an acknowledgement. "I have been forced to confront the consequences of my actions," she wrote. "While I believed at the time that I was maintaining academic standards, I now understand that my grading practices were biased and harmful. I particularly regret targeting students whose parents were serving in the military. These students and families deserved my respect and support, not my prejudice. While I cannot undo the harm I caused, I hope that the corrections being made will provide some measure of justice." It wasn't much, but it was something. At least she'd finally admitted what she'd done. My dad retired from the Army that fall after 23 years of service. At his retirement ceremony, he surprised me by dedicating part of his speech to me. "My son taught me something important this year," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd of soldiers and families. "He taught me that courage isn't just about facing danger on the battlefield. Sometimes the hardest courage is standing up for what's right in everyday situations, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something." My son demonstrated that kind of courage when he exposed wrongdoing that affected dozens of military families. He made me proud, not me, just to be his father, but to be a soldier whose service was honored by his actions.